In this video, we're going to be talking about the Magic Keyboard for the iPad Pro 12.9 inch. I picked this up off Amazon. They're running a $80 off promotion or around that, and I just wanted to try it out, and because it was cheaper, I said why not, if it's worth it, then I get it at a really good discount. And we're also going to be talking about to try and see if it's going to be worth it for you to pick up in 2021 for your iPad Pro 2020 or iPad Pro 2018 models. Now, before I get started, I just wanted to say thank you to every single one of my subscribers. I recently hit the 1,000 subscriber milestone, which is huge for me, and I can't wait to grow the channel further. And over here, we take it easy with some tea, so if that sounds interesting to you, then hit the subscribe button and like if you haven't already. So now let's get started with the actual video. Alright, so this review is going to be broken down into different sections, so go ahead and select on the chapter that you want to jump to if you are over one section and you want to just move on with the video. So the first part is going to be the build and look of the case. So one thing that you can always say about Apple products is that they have a very Apple look. It looks very nice. It looks like it's made of high quality materials, and with the floating design, it does look futuristic. Something that you may have seen on other videos is that with the material choice, it does get a lot of fingerprint and smudges, and if that's going to bother you, then you're going to need to look for some type of skin to cover it, or just look for a different option entirely, because this thing does get a lot of dust and fingerprints and a lot of smudges basically just from placing it on the desk or just grabbing it with your hands. So make sure you understand what you're getting into when you're making the purchase. The panel where the iPad sits on, it does have a very nice microfiber lining on it, so you don't have to worry about your iPad getting scratched. And the magnets that are behind that little section are very strong, and you don't have to worry about the iPad falling out, or even if you wiggle it and you move it around, you don't really have to worry about your iPad just flying out and getting cracked and smashing on the ground. It won't happen, and you have to take a lot of force to basically pull it off, or you just have to pull it off in a specific way for it to even just kind of easily slide off. So don't worry about damaging your iPad or having it fall out if you're just carrying it in the Magic Keyboard while you're walking around. The only thing you should be worried about is the Apple Pencil, because that thing is not held on that strongly, and we all know that if you have an iPad Pro. Another aspect of the case that I would say I don't like when it comes to the design are the sharp edges on the bottom. You do feel it from time to time, and it does bother me, so think about if that'll bother you if you're trying to make this purchase. Speaking of the edges, you're not going to have any place to basically put your thumb or your fingers when you're trying to open it up like you would on a MacBook, and that will take time until you get used to it. In addition, when it comes to the design of the product, I think they did a good job of making it balanced. When it comes to flat surfaces, it works really well. It's super balanced, and when you tap it, there's no tipping over of the iPad. The screen does wobble a little bit, but not to the point where it'll be bothersome or it will affect you while you're trying to work. But when it comes to using the iPad on your lap with the Magic Keyboard, it's not that balanced depending on how you sit. If you sit with your legs angled up, then it will be pretty much fine, but if it's angled down, it'll get kind of wobbly, and sometimes it will fall. And for me, it did almost fall one time, and I was lucky to catch it, and that's just something to be wary about if you're using it in that type of situation. Now let's talk about the keyboard and trackpad of the case, because that's mainly what people want to buy this case for. Typing on the Magic Keyboard is really nice. It does take some getting used to though, because the keyboard is a little bit more cramped compared to a full-size keyboard, and if you have thicker fingers, then you might have a little bit of an issue while you're getting used to it. For me, it took about a day or two for me to get used to it and just fully be able to type fast like I normally do. And aside from that, what I've noticed is that the keyboard does provide good enough travel to not make your fingers ache. I had the 2018 MacBook Pro for a few weeks, and then I had to get rid of it because my hands were hurting so much from typing, and I'm normally a heavy typer too. So if you're a heavy typer, then basically you don't really have to worry about this keyboard case. Now just below the keyboard, you'll find the trackpad, and with the trackpad is just like any other Apple trackpad except for the size. The size is something that you'll get used to, and at first it'll feel like it's too small, but once you get used to the gestures and how it works with the iPad OS, you're going to be perfectly fine with that size. You honestly don't need too much bigger of a trackpad. It would be nice to have, but with it not there, it's not going to be a deal breaker for anyone. That being said, with the trackpad, the gestures are super smooth and everything is just so fluid when you're using it with the iPad Pro. I've had no issues with the trackpad or even clicking, because like any other Apple trackpad, the clicking on it is very good, and just the glass surface is just super nice on it. You're honestly not going to have any issues with the trackpad. It is way better than my Windows laptop and pretty much any other Windows computer I've used. If I had to make any complaints when it came to the keyboard layout, I wish that there was an extra row for either function keys or, you know, any of those shortcuts to the tools and settings, and also an escape key. Basically, I always find myself trying to reach for an escape key that's never there, and it would just be nicer to be able to control your brightness, the keyboard brightness, the volume, without needing to touch your iPad at all, and that would just basically make your workflow a little bit faster and smoother. But again, this is not one of those things that's a deal breaker, and given the design that they've chosen to go with, if they had an extra row, it would be underneath the floating iPad, and you basically wouldn't even be able to access it. So I see why Apple didn't do it, but I just wish, or at least in the next generation, that they would include it, something like that. So how is it using this case as a student? I mainly take my notes with an Apple Pencil, so I don't use the Magic Keyboard too much when I'm taking notes in class. However, for my assignments, I do have a lot of lab reports to write, and I have tried using the iPad while I'm editing those Google Docs, and I've basically gotten a lot of use out of this case, and I can see why a lot of people like typing on it, even when it relates to school. Now, if you are like me and you use the Apple Pencil to take notes, or maybe you just use the Apple Pencil more than you type on the iPad, then what you're going to notice is that there's no really way to comfortably write with the iPad in your Apple Pencil while the iPad is attached to the case. There's some workarounds that are kind of weird, and I never found them to be helpful or comfortable to write with. So if you're writing for like an hour or 2 hour class period, it's not going to be that comfortable, especially if you don't like writing in landscape. Now, if you're planning on picking up the Magic Keyboard and you use the Apple Pencil a lot, you're going to be detaching the iPad from the Magic Keyboard a whole lot. So make sure you pick up a case like this carbon fiber case from Pitaka that still lets you attach the iPad to the Magic Keyboard. And if you want to check that out, I'll leave a video link in the description for that video. All right, so now this is the big question. Is it worth it? I would say for $349, it won't be worth it to a lot of people. And why do I say this? It's because if you're a student and you use the Apple Pencil just a whole lot, then I would skip this entirely. You don't need to spend that type of money for something you're not going to use that often. Now, if you're going to be either writing emails a lot, Word documents, and you don't have a laptop and you want a more laptop feel with your iPad Pro, then I think this is a great option. You're not going to find a better option than this when it comes to iPad keyboard cases with trackpad. Now, if you're a student and you kind of are 50-50, you know, using the iPad for notes with an Apple Pencil, and you also type things out, then just ask yourself if you think it's going to be worth it. And for me, I would say if you use it enough, then yes. But really, if you're not going to use it that often, then completely skip it out, because it's a lot of money to spend on something that you're not going to use and that you have to constantly put away while you're taking notes. Now, when it comes to the question of worth, something that I've also seen is, should I just get a MacBook Air? And I've kind of felt that feeling too while using this, like, why should someone buy this? Shouldn't they just buy a MacBook Air? And I think for a lot of people, the answer to that question might be yes, because they're not looking for a tablet or a hybrid device. But the iPad does have a different type of experience, and I would say it is more fun, even though sometimes you do have to go through some annoying workarounds to get what you want done. And just overall, it does make it feel more like a laptop, and I can see the direction that Apple is heading with the iPad Pros. Another point to think about is that the iPad Pro next generation might be coming out any day now or any month, as you've seen with the whole John Prosser shaving his eyebrows fiasco with the whole March 23rd event, and possibly having an April event or not. You know, we never know when the next generation is going to come out, and it seems like it's heading in the direction of getting a new Magic Keyboard. And basically, this Magic Keyboard that's on sale right now is a first generation product as well. So make sure you keep that in mind, because the first generation is never fully baked, is never fully packaged the way Apple intends. And looking down the line, you might get a lot more features that you might like or that might benefit you even more. So make sure you keep an eye out for that as well when you're trying to make your decision. If you're going to keep your iPad Pro for many years, you know, if you have the 2018-2020 model and you want to keep it, nothing's going to make you upgrade this year, then by all means, if you type a lot, then get this case. However, if not, then just stick around and see what happens next, because the next generation might be something better for students as well. That's going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know down in the comments what you think of the Magic Keyboard and if you picked one up, and if you have any video recommendations for me to do. And until next time, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe, and take it easy with some tea, and I'll see you guys in the next one.